Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this CG Pro live info session. I'm going to just share a couple of things in a second. We'll do an introduction to John. Let me just share my screen. So tonight is all about game design in Unreal Engine, and it is my pleasure to introduce John Waynick, who's an instructor at CG Pro. He's going to be leading the session tonight. Thanks for joining us, John.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You bet. So just a quick presentation overview here. John, if you want to take it away and tell us what we'll be going through tonight.
Yeah, so one of the big things I want to talk about tonight was to kind of give a little bit of an overview into the game industry and why we're doing a broad spectrum game design course in the first place. And a lot of that's going to come down to, tackling the 4 pillars of the game industry and how those apply to different roles within the game industry, how you would break into it, what to look for, some tips and tricks. And then, of course, answer the question, why are we using Unreal Engine for this, and how being able to use a game engine like Unreal makes you a more powerful candidate when you're trying to break into the industry.
Awesome. Thank you, John. We will be also, we have a class, so there will be a short presentation towards the end about that. We also will have a Q&A. We'll stick around to answer people's questions afterwards. Feel free to ask questions. This is a live session. This is not pre-recorded, unless you're listening to it on the recording. Then it is pre-recorded. But if you're here with us live tonight, please ask questions into the chat on the various platforms this is going out onto, so we can bring those up. And we bring them up during the session if it makes sense. And if we need to push some of them towards the end, stick around for the Q&A and we'll make sure we get through them all. So a very quick introduction to myself, then I'll get out of the way. My name is Ed Dawson-Taylor. I am a co-founder of CG Pro, the school. I've worked largely in the film and commercials industries, a lot in interactive as well, used Unreal Engine for the last 8 years or so. I've been in visual effects for about 15 years, worked at studios like ILM and NPC, and worked on things like Lion King, Jungle Book, Jurassic World, etc. So that's me, but it's mostly not about me tonight. So John, if you want to introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, hi, I'm John Waynick. I'm an Unreal Authorized Instructor, have been since pretty close to the beginning of the program. And I'm currently working as a senior technical environment artist at Intrepid Studios on the game Ashes of Creation. What does that actually mean? I wear a lot of hats that change quite a bit. Right now, I'm kind of the lighting guy. That's what I'm doing now, overhauling the lighting. But shh, you didn't hear that. I consider myself an environment artist first above anything else, because I've always been an artist. But technical environment artist would be the technical name for the role of what I do, which kind of marries a little bit of tech artist with environment artist. And I've been using Unreal Engine for about 20 years now. Yeah, it was about 20 years ago, back in February 2003, when my Uncle Johnny actually introduced me to Unreal Engine 2 for the first time. Yeah, it was back when it was still a very subtractive nature, where you didn't add to a world, you had like a big block and you like subtracted from it. It's very, very different from how it is now. But when he introduced me to that, like, everything changed in my life, and everything that I thought that I knew I was going to do with my life and my career and everything just completely went out the door. And so I've been using it since then. Used a lot of Unreal Engine 3, got to alpha and beta test Unreal Engine 4. And of course, now we're on Unreal Engine 5. And through all of this, for the last, it's been over 10 years now, I've also been sharing my knowledge as much as possible. And I've been doing it through various schools, various programs. some business to business stuff. I've traveled around the country, around the world, even teaching Unreal Engine. I'm a big proponent of women in the entertainment industries. So I've gone around to a few like all girls schools and all girls classes to teach game design and development with Unreal there. I'm also the founder of Intrepid Studios, and it's doing business as Learn Digital Alchemy, which is my own little platform for just trying to get as much knowledge on Unreal out there as possible. And then, of course, I've used Unreal Engine in just about every way imaginable. I've used it in the game industry. I've used it in the film industry on virtual production. I've used it for VR simulation stuff, a couple of government contracts I can't talk about, a lot of advertising as well. Unreal is actually really big in advertising. And of course, retail store layout, believe it or not. Unreal gets used for that. So it's a really powerful tool, and that kind of plays into why we're using Unreal Engine for this course. But if you want to, also, almost forgot, photographer, cinematographer, writer, kind of an actor sometimes, a little bit of a thespian. You see my green screen in the background over here, my little home studio that I got going on. If you've seen the ad for this course that I did, if you haven't seen it, you should watch it.
You should. But you really should. It's fun.
I have a little bit too much fun with the green screen. And for anybody who has seen it, this is the Rapunzel wig right here.
I thought you were going to get the sword out. That's even better.
Yeah. So now people are wondering, it's like, wait a minute, I haven't seen it. What's with the Rapunzel wig? Yeah, you should
go see the video.
It's totally worth it. But yeah, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so one of the reasons we're here is to talk about this upcoming course. And a lot of the reasons are asking the question, why are we doing that? And I wanted to just kind of go into the game industry a little bit of it, the state of it, and what it means to get into it, to break into it. And I want to do that with tackling the 4 pillars of the game industry. And those 4 pillars are mechanics, aesthetics, technology, and story. Now, the mechanics basically are, what are you doing in the game? Like what's the goal of it? Like how do you win it? How do you play it? How do you lose it? Is it multiplayer? All of that. That's where the mechanics come in. What are you actually doing in the game? The aesthetics obviously is like, what does it look like? What's the visual? What's the art? What do the characters look like? The environments, the animations, even the UI. And can't forget audio. Audio fits in that as well. Even though it's not a visual thing, it's still a very important aspect of, bringing everything together as a whole. And then technology, of course, what game engine are you using? Like we're using Unreal Engine, but, there's also Unity out there. There's Frostbite, Hero Engine, lots of proprietary engines, Lumberyard, the Amazon uses. Lots of different game engines to choose from there, and the technologies behind them. What kind of what's the programming language that's being used for it? What's the networking solution that's being used for it? And of course, story. That is what's your game about? What's the story of your game? What is the lore? And you can have these big, massive open world RPGs that are all the rage right now, that they're going to have all these like these deep stories with this background lore and voice acting, cinematics, written out quest lines, all of that. But even if you go back to something like Pong, for example, how can you say that Pong has a story? Well, it does. It's a very simple story. It's the story of 2 players batting a ball, back and forth. Well, it's more of a little pixel that's being back and forth, but it's still a story, and it's still a very important element of it. Now, what does that mean for jobs within the game industry? Well, there are 4 primary departments, we'll say, that divide up into more sub departments, but 4 primary ones that fit those 4 pillars. So from the mechanic side, you have design, and that covers things like level design, mission design, quest design, all sorts of stuff like that, combat mechanics, platforming mechanics, anything of that nature. Then you have art, and art is probably one of the biggest overall departments because you can break that down into the environment art, which that's where I exist mostly. The environment art, the world building, lighting, all of that. But then you have your character art, and these characters, they have to animate, and then you have your visual effects, all the effects that are on the screen, whenever you're casting spells or you're in combat. And you have audio that comes in and ties this all together. And I can't stress enough that, audio is definitely a major part of art. And I want to throw some love out there to all of our audio techs, especially over at Intrepid. Kat, hey, how's it going? She's wonderful. She has been like single-handedly carrying audio for that game for seemingly forever. But audio is a really important part of art as well. And that covers, sound effects just as much as music, ambience, all of that stuff. And then, of course, story. There's, you have, with story, you have really 2 main, well, we'll say 3 main things in a lot of modern games. You've got somebody who's doing the background lore, like the lore of the world. And what's really special about that role is that you don't see probably at least 50% of what they do. So it's like, I've worked on projects where, we'll have somebody that is, they're our lore guy. And this person is writing all the background lore of the world for the game and everything. But, a lot of that is just the starting point, like the jumping off point for story elements that actually get told. And sometimes, different elements of this background lore, they're saved for expansions down the line. But other times it's just like, oh, hey, let's say you've got a game where there's a background lore of like these this pantheon of gods for this world that it exists on. You as a player may only get very little insight, such as like the names of the gods and maybe a couple of things that they did. But the lore guy, the guy doing the background lore, no, that person is thinking about like from birth to death of each one of those gods on that pantheon, and is thinking about everything they've ever done. In Intrepid right now in Ashes of Creation, our lore guy was just talking about the other day about, here's all the different intoxicating alcohols that exist in the world, and we're probably never going to see those in game, but it's like the lore guy has to think about all of those things, even if you're never going to, the player's never going to get to hear about them. But then, of course, you have the actual quest writers, your mission designers that are, or not mission designers, mission lore writers that are working with the mission designers, and they're trying to write out stories for these quests, stuff like that. And then you have your script writers that are more traditional in a sense of, they're writing the dialogue that characters are going to be saying in cinematics. They're scripting out individual cinematics that play to the story as a whole. And so story is a big part of it that I know also doesn't get a lot of love, but it exists. It's out there. Next slide, if you will. Roles within the game industry. We've kind of dived in and talked about these a little bit already, but just to go down through a visual list and see these and think about them. Design, like I said, level designers what does a level designer do? Well, a level designer is designing out the gameplay space. So it's like your level design person is thinking about not the visual aesthetics of an environment so much as what does this look like as a gameplay space? Like, how do you exist within it? How do you move around within it? How are you going to interact with it? What kinds of interactions are there going to be? The level designer is thinking about, how are we going to create choke points to like push players down a certain way? What colors of lighting are we going to use to guide a player down this direction? And the level designers are really where it becomes a lot different from the film side of things. So as an environment artist, it's been really easy for me to jump between games and film and virtual production using these techniques, because it's like, oh, I'm just trying to make something pretty, right? I want this environment to be beautiful to look at, or sometimes ugly to look at if that's the aesthetic you're going for. But I want to create emotion through the actual art of this environment. The level designer, on the other hand, is not worried about that as much as making sure that it feels right. Like, it feels right to run around in it. And this is where it's really different in games, because in games, you're not just looking at one area. You have this whole, a lot of times in modern games, 360 world around you that you have to exist in. And you can never, ever trust a player to stay within the bounds that you have defined for them. They're always going to escape it. Players are always going to do what they're not supposed to do. And so you always have to account for that. And that's part of the level designer's job. And that's one of the things that we're really going to dive pretty deep into in the course as well, is not just looking at world building from a perspective of environment art, but the level design as well. And then the mission design, combat design, these kinds of things, those are what you're actually doing within this world, within this environment. And the thing is, when it comes to the actual game design part of it, all of this can and absolutely should be happening before you ever bring art into it. You can have designers, your entire team of designers, actually build out a game with just white boxing, gray boxing, simple shapes, and all of that. And it's their job to make it fun. That's what design is all about. And I see a nice little question pop up here. Curious if this course would be for someone looking to get in on the service side of the gaming industry. In other words, selling solutions that help developers streamline their process and get their product to market faster. Yes, actually. That's a really good question, and the answer to that is yes. And I will get into that a little bit deeper here shortly. But short answer to that is that for getting into the game industry, no matter what role that you want to do, it really, really comes down to having an understanding how everything works as a whole. And that's always going to be a benefit. And especially if you're doing something that's not related to any of these four pillars here, because these four pillars of design, art, engineering, story, all of this, those are what build the game. But then you have to actually market the game, you have to sell the game, you have to support the game, you have community services and all of that. And the more you know about game design and development, the easier that's going to be. I've worked on several projects where we have producers and project managers that, they, like, what do? They work in Jira, they assign tasks, they're in spreadsheets all day, they're in Confluence, writing documentation, scheduling meetings, running Zoom calls. But all of the best ones that I've ever worked with can open up a project in Unreal and build something, because they know how it works. And that's one of the things with the game industry, is that a lot of other industries, you have to niche down and you specialize, and it's that way in games too, especially as you get further up the AAA ladder. But the more you know about everything else about it, the better off you're going to be, and the better team member you're going to be at a studio. And so, looking down through this, we have in art. We have environment art, we have the world building that's happening, which usually happens on top of the level design. That's the world you exist in, that you play in. Character art, because characters are the main characters of the game. So you have your player character, you have supporting characters, NPCs, enemies, all sorts of things like that. And of course, these characters need to be animated. So you have animation. Animation on the player character side, animation on the the enemy side, and then there's environment animation, things that are happening in the environment as well, that make it a little bit more interactive. You have your user interface on top of everything that's giving you information. It's tracking your health, your mana, your currency, your collectibles, all those things. Visual effects to make it all pretty. You're casting spells. It's not going to do any good having a game where you're casting spells if you don't actually have the visual effects for the spells. Of course, once again, audio ties it all together. Like, I dare you to go play your favorite video game on mute and then play it with like full surround sound headphones, or in a living room with a full home theater system. Completely different experience. Audio is so important. But then, of course, you have the engineering. You have your systems engineers that are responsible for building out the main systems, for studios with proprietary engines. These are the guys that are going to build the game engine itself. But a lot of the times, even if you're using something like Unreal, you're still, you have systems engineers that are building out the main systems, the main core systems of the game. And then you have your gameplay engineers, which kind of teeter a little bit of a line of, you have your programmers that are doing a lot of gameplay programming of elements. But then you also have, with something like Unreal Engine or even Unity or Lumberyard, that have all of these visual scripting languages, you have somebody that can exist on that side as well. And then, of course, the more that each of these knows about the other, the better. And then, of course, netcode. Everybody is, I've heard complaints about games that would have been great if their netcode wasn't terrible. Well, somebody was in charge of that. And I've tried to look into how to code netcode, and I do not want that job. So don't be too hard on the engineers that are the network engineers whenever you play a game and the netcode isn't great, because especially if it's like a big, famous, mass multiplayer online RPG where you've got hundreds of thousands of players that are logging on at the same time, and they launch, and there's queues and the servers crash and everything like that. It's like, well, these network engineers, they are missing weekends with their family because of that. So it's not easy. Give them a little bit of slack. But then, of course, the story side, we talked about what lore builders are and the difference with, like the quest writers and the script writers and everything like that. All of this ties together, and all of this encompasses what it is to build a game. But like I said, in the answer to that previous question, you still have a lot of other roles: production, project management, leads, supervisors, art directors that cover like the entire department, engineering supervisors that cover an entire department, community managers, just all of these different people that go into the marketing and production side of building a game and getting it out there in front of people. The more that they know about the process, the better it's going to be for the game, for the team, for the studio. So game industry, if you're trying to break in, the more you know, the better. Even if you're not doing that thing specifically, the more you know about it, the better it's going to be. We got a question here regarding story. How does one get into narrative design for games if coming from traditional screenwriting background? What kind of writing samples would I need? And then do you source using agents, managers, or is it just about knowing game producers? Well, one thing I'll tell you about the game industry is I'm sure you've heard the old adage of it's not what you know, it's who you know. That's a really big thing in the film industry, but it's also a really big thing in the game industry too. I would say probably 50% of it is who you know, and then 40% is what you can do, and then 10% is everything else. But it really is important, who you know. So if you come from a traditional screenwriting background, then you have the skills. You have the basic foundational skills already. What you would need to do then is just learn the proper methods to translate those screenwriting skills over to something that can be used in the game industry. Now, that said, think about game studios like Blizzard Entertainment. One thing that we know about Blizzard is that all of the recent games, from Warcraft to Diablo to StarCraft, Overwatch, all of them, they all have been doing these like really big fancy cinematics. And usually those are part of trailers, they're part of story cinematics. Diablo 4 had a really impressive reveal trailer. Like what is that? What writing went into that? That was traditional screenwriting right there. Yes, you are writing actions and dialogue for CGI characters, but it's traditional screenwriting. So in that sense, yeah, if you got an agent or a manager, have them get in contact with other people in the industry. You would want to get in contact with people in the industry, because a little secret that I'll tell you that I might probably get shot for mentioning, but in the game industry, and it's kind of the same in the film industry sometimes too, but in the game industry, a lot of the times jobs are hired before they're posted. It's not every job, you can go to like a game studio's website, their careers page, and see stuff up there and apply for it and everything. But there is a legal requirement that a studio has to actually post a job before they can actually hire somebody for it. But a lot of the times, how it goes is that I'll say, for example, let's say I'm at work, I'm at the office, and we're about to expand. Before any job for an environment artist gets posted, my manager will come to me, or my supervisor will come to me, and he'll be like, hey, we need a new environment artist. Do you have anybody in mind? It's like, oh yeah, I got a few people, here, look at their portfolios. These are their art stations right here. And then my manager is going to go and look at those. Our art director is going to go look at those and, get an idea. And it's like, hey, let's have our recruiter send a message out. And so the recruiters go out and they send these messages. And from there, they get some people in. And then at that point, when they start sending those messages, they have to post the job. But the thing is, if you get a message from a recruiter, one of two things has happened. One, they've had it posted for a while and they haven't gotten any good applicants. Or two, which is usually more likely, they've seen your stuff, they're interested in you already, and they want you to come interview, before a bunch of applicants come in. So in that case, to answer that question, yeah, a lot of it is networking, who you know, go to GDC, go to conferences, try to make friends with people in the industry. And story is one of the really hard ones to get into because there aren't that many jobs for it. So who you know, the more people that you know, the more you can network with, the more opportunity you have to have a friend that says, hey, I have a friend that does this whenever, something comes up at their studio, the better off you're going to be in that sense. But as for the actual skills of the screenwriting, or of the story for games, coming from screenwriting, it's just learning how it applies in there and how you want to do it. Because like I said, there are the cinematics, there's the script writing part of it, but there's also a background lore. So if you've ever sat down and tried to write a novel or something and you've outlined out, your world building for it, you're in a pretty good position there. But then, if you've ever done any short stories, that's really good for being able to do the mission story or quest story design side of it. So it's all about learning to translate those skills, but definitely, if you have an agent or a manager, have them, reaching out for you, but you should also be trying to network with as many people as you can. Make friends, don't be mean, be a cool person, be an interesting person to work with. And that's a big part of it there. Yeah, next slide, if you will. All right, breaking in. So we've talked a little bit about some of this, but breaking into the industry is always the hardest part. Once you're in, once you're in, it's a lot easier because experience means everything. Oh, you worked on this game? Okay, we feel comfortable talking to you. But if you don't have those credits on your, you don't have those credits on your resume, or you don't have these people that you've met, you've networked with from these other jobs, then at that point, breaking in, getting your foot in the door is kind of difficult. But there are steps that you can take. There are absolutely steps that you can take that can help you and elevate you above a lot of the candidates. Now, I don't know the metrics for every role in the industry, but I do know the metrics for the art departments. And I know the metrics for especially environment art. So, let's say an environment art job gets posted. Yeah, it is not uncommon to get 800 plus people apply for that job. And so how do you compete with 800 plus people? That's the question. Well, luckily, environment art, there's a lot of jobs for environment art. Character art, it's the same. You get 800 people applying for it, but there are less of them because less are needed. Usually for every character artist, you have 4 to 6 environment artists. That's the ratio there. So character is even harder. But then you have something like tech art tech art is one of those interesting ones where there's actually more seats than there are butts. So if you can get into the tech art side of things, then it's really easy to break in there as long as you've got the necessary skills. Because most studios that I've worked at and that I know of are always starving for tech artists. It's hard to find the tech artists, but that also means that a lot of the other art roles, especially environment and character, have started to incorporate a lot of the tech art side to them. So what does that mean? That means that, let's say you want to be an environment artist. I can talk a lot about environment artists. Let's say you want to be an environment artist and you're applying for a job. And I have been on the hiring side of the interview table many times, probably over 100 times at least. And let's say I'm interviewing you and another candidate, or I'm interviewing 2 candidates here. And one of these candidates has a really good portfolio and the other candidate has a very similar portfolio, like they're equal, they're pretty much equal in terms of what they're able to show in their portfolios. They're pretty equal in terms of their knowledge around some of the game industry specific stuff. And, one of these candidates can show me that they know how to do something in Blueprint. Oh, hey, guess what? That's the one that's getting hired. And the reason for that is not necessarily because they're going to be doing a bunch of like technical Blueprint stuff on the job, but it's more about the idea that, oh, they have experimented with it. They know how it works. That means that they've unlocked that level in their head of how some of this stuff works together. They may never do it on the job, but they know how it works. And that's really, really important in games, is knowing how everything really fits together and works. So in a lot of instances here, the first thing that you want to do is decide what you want to specialize in. Like we've gone over, there's so many different roles, but no matter what it is that you want to specialize in, going through a course like what we're about to do can be really helpful, because it opens up that knowledge of all the different aspects of the game design and development process, which makes you a better candidate. And it's going to be better for your skills as well, because you'll have in your head, okay, I need to do something this way because it affects this team over here, this department over here. And of course, the question is, what do you want to specialize in? If you have an answer to that, then great. You're on a good path. But if you don't have an answer to that, then this is still a good course to take, because you'll get exposure to a lot of the different sides of it, and it'll help you decide what you find the most fun. But of course, no matter what it is, what path you want to go down, it's all about your portfolio as much as possible. You just keep going. If you post a new thing, maybe it's in a new environment, new character, new animation, new game prototype, whatever it is that you post, and you haven't gotten a job yet with all that you've applied, take on another project, do another one, keep doing more, keep building your skills out, keep learning new things. Because what it comes down to in this industry is that there's one difference between a junior and a senior, and that is how long it takes to do it. And that's one of the things that you've got to understand about breaking into the industry, is that to be a junior, you have to actually be able to achieve the same exact quality that a senior does. The senior is just going to be able to do it like 3 to 4 times faster than you, but you still have to be able to reach that quality. And so, work, and then learn as much as you can about the different roles, which is where a course like this comes in really useful, because you get exposed to a lot of things. And then join a team. Get together with a friend, with a classmate that you meet during a course like this, and do something together and get used to working in that team environment. Those are some of the biggest tips for being able to break in. Next slide. There we go. Why Unreal Engine? Well, aside from the fact that I've been using it for over 20 years now, and I am absolutely in love with it, it's a really, really powerful tool, really powerful software. And it can be really intimidating when you first open it up, but once you wrap your mind around the interface, which is not that hard, I have taught so many people in under an hour how to navigate around Unreal. And after that hour was up, it's like, oh, wow, this is actually really easy to use, and it's really intuitive. And the great thing about Unreal is most of the interface is just like the rest of the interface. So your material editors, your blueprint editors, your Niagara, all of this, very similar. They work in a very similar way. So you learn one, and it's easy to pick up the others. Unreal really easily integrated into source control, like Perforce, for example. So it's great. It's really great for working on a team, working on a big project. And it's great for getting familiarized with the fundamentals. So Unreal, there's so many other engines out there, proprietary, as well as others that, that are commercial, but they all have a lot in common, and they all have the same foundations of what goes into it. Your models, your textures, your materials, lighting, gameplay elements, all of that. The UI is different across these different engines, and the systems, the internal systems, can be a little bit different, but the fundamentals, the foundations are all the same. And Unreal is really good for learning what those are. That's why you look at a lot of job postings, and even though they use a proprietary engine, like if you're just breaking in, nobody expects you to know how to use Frostbite, because you have not used Frostbite if you have not worked at a studio that uses Frostbite. But I've seen a lot of those job postings at those places that they, they'll ask on their requirements. It's like, can you use Unreal Engine or Unity? Unity is another one too. But they do that because those foundations are the same. No matter what engine you're in, the game development fundamentals are the same. But Unreal also has some really cool stuff in it, like the material editor, which is really powerful. It's a node-based shader tool that lets you do some crazy things. I know that I have spent a lot of time in the material editor building out these really crazy complex materials, and then 2 weeks later going back and refactoring to make it actually be performant in game. But it's so much fun that you can have with it, because there's so many things that you can do. And Unreal also has a really powerful material instancing system, which means that you can make a master material that has a bunch of variables, a bunch of parameters, and you can create instances of that master material and change those parameters, which can be everything from like simple stuff like being able to change the color of a light, on an emissive, all the way up to being able to change the way volumetric clouds interact with other volumetric clouds and all of that. The world building capabilities of Unreal are really powerful, because it's really easy to get in there and build out a world that, with the level design, as well as build out the environment. It's got great landscape tools, so you can do open worlds with foliage, trees. You can actually, one thing, how this ties into the material side, landscapes, you can create auto materials, so where the shape of your landscape actually determines like what is rock, what is grass, all of that. And you can actually integrate some of your foliage into the landscape material with grass maps. So like you can have this auto material that's automatically going to place down foliage grass that blows in the wind based on the shape of your terrain with the landscape tools. And really powerful lighting to tie all that together, especially with Unreal Engine 5 and Lumen, which has some real-time global illumination that is just insane. It is crazy what Lumen can do. And it's just like, it blows my mind every day. Like right now, what I said earlier, on Ashes of Creation, my job changes like every month. And this month I'm the lighting guy. And just, I'm always like still amazed every day at all of these features that Unreal Engine 5 has with Lumen that I keep uncovering. It's like, oh, I didn't know that you could do that. Oh, hey, look at that. You can control that. Wow, I had no idea. Couldn't do that in Unreal Engine 4. But then also Blueprint. Blueprint's a big thing, and Blueprint's actually a big part of this course as well. Because Blueprint, there's a lot to Blueprint, but what most people know about Blueprint in Unreal is that it is a visual scripting language. And so it is a node-based editor for this visual code. So it kind of works like a flow graph almost. But it is really powerful, because Blueprint, a lot of people don't realize this, but Blueprint is actually completely object-oriented. And it is C++ based. It is basically taking the underlying C++ code and encapsulating it in these nodes. But even without opening Visual Studio, even without writing a single line of code, if you understand object-oriented programming, then Blueprint will absolutely blow your mind because it becomes so powerful. So Blueprint is great because it can be really easy to do some very artist-friendly things. So if you're just an artist and you're not a very technical person, learn a little bit of Blueprint and your whole life will change. But if you do understand those object-oriented programming fundamentals, Blueprint will blow your mind because you have all of your functions, your interfaces, your inheritance, polymorphism, encapsulation, all of it you can do with Blueprint. So it's really, really powerful. And then all of these things working together make it really easy for anybody to get in that's willing to learn this stuff, to get in and actually build a game. You can be a solo dev if you want, or join an indie team, or build up your skills and join a AAA studio. Next slide. Aha. Okay, so this would be Ed.
Indeed. Thank you so very much, John, for that great presentation. There was lots of great info in there. If you guys out there have questions, then please do bring them up. We're still going to do some QA at the end. So if that brought up some questions for you, please do let us know. Let me see if I can get a better arrangement of the screen here. Oh, this one will do. Okay. So yeah, just wanted to take a second, talk a little bit about the course and about CG Pro. As I said, we'll have some QA after this, so stick around if you want to ask some questions. CG Pro is, as this says, a school. It's an online live training center. All our courses are taught live. We do it online, so you can learn from anywhere. We record everything so that you can always watch the recordings back. But we're a school, first and foremost, a community. We as this says, focus on the cutting edge. We teach Unreal Engine a lot. We're an Unreal Authorized Training Center. We've been one of those for a couple of years. We teach public classes. We do private trainings to companies. We just did some with NASA. It was pretty cool. One of their big contractors, Metex. But we do a lot of public training. We do public courses. And we also do a little bit of placement to help people get into the industry, and consulting. People who go through the school regularly have success in getting on into the industry that they want to get into. So there's a little bit about what CG Pro is. We teach in multiple different industries, and we're a lot in film, and we do a lot in broadcast and games and others as well. So the course that John is the lead instructor for is game design in Unreal Engine. And there's just a little bit of a summary here to explain what is in the course. And rather than me going through that, John, probably you would want to walk through this bit.
Yeah, of course. So this particular solution here, this layout, is actually kind of based on a curriculum that I started 10 years ago. And this is pretty much the path that I've gone through more or less for the last 10 years at various schools, traveling all around the country, all of that, when trying to introduce people to like the broad spectrum of just the game industry as a whole and what it means to work within it. And so one of the first things that we got to do is, since we're using Unreal Engine, we got to get in and make sure that we understand how to use Unreal Engine, and to just understand some of the basic concepts like physically based rendering, what that is, how to work with it. And this is going to be the week that a lot of people are probably going to come in and they're going to be like, I already know how to learn how to use Unreal Engine. I've been using it, and I want to expand on it. So this will be where we get to dive in with those students to expand even further and figure out what extra challenges that we can take on throughout the course. While those who've never used Unreal Engine, don't worry, you'll come in and before the end of that first week, you will be pretty dangerous with Unreal. But then, we're going to get into world building and level design and go over like the idea of design first, then the environment art, and start to explore some of the important optimization aspects of game and how that's different from film. So like, in film, you're just trying to make something really pretty that's going to render fine for whatever camera angle it's shooting at. In games, you've got the whole 360 around you, and you have to be thinking about performance and optimization right out the gate. So that's where we're going to start looking into things like what is the mid-poly workflow? What are trim sheets? What are tileable textures versus the actual like fully modeled out props and stuff like that. And then once we have that down, then week 3, that's when it really starts to get fun. And we start to dive into Blueprint. And first, we got to understand Blueprint, get a little bit of intro to that, and learn how to use it to do some really simple things. And then throughout the rest of the course, Blueprint's going to be a really big focus in every continuing aspect of it. So week 4, we're going to get into gameplay and UI. That's where we're going to start exploring some actual gameplay mechanics. And how to read those with a user interface. So for example, most games have some kind of health mechanic or resource mechanic, and you have a UI that tracks that with a bar or something. We're going to learn exactly how to do that, among some other things. And then week 5, we're going to go back to the level design stuff and really start to think about how can we make an environment interactive? How can we add things like not just doors that open when you go up to them, but doors that are locked. You have to go and search, and you have to find a key, add that key to an inventory to then be able to go and unlock the door, and how all of these different elements can work together to make an interactive environment, which then, of course, for your own projects, you'll take and run with and start to create whatever wild mechanics you can for your own level design. And then week 6, that's when we're going to get into custom characters. We're not going to model characters. That's completely out of scope. But there's a lot of characters out there from places like the marketplace that you can, like if you've bought any, you can use those. There's the Paragon characters that Epic has. There's Mixamo, Character Creator and iClone, all sorts of places that these characters can come from. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at how to bring in one of those characters, set it up as your playable character, set up an animation blueprint, things like that, get that all in there. And then the next week, we'll expand upon that to get into NPCs and, basic AI, not talking like chat GPT or whatever. I mean, like actual like game AI, patrolling enemies or, NPCs that you can engage in a dialogue with that sort of thing. And then week 8 is going to be a lot of polish and play testing. And now don't get me wrong, play testing is going to be a big part of it starting in week 3, but possibly even week 2, because we're going to be doing a lot of sharing with each other. So you're going to get used to making something and then sharing it with your fellow classmates so that they can go in and run through your world or run through, test out some of your game mechanics, stuff like that. So we'll be doing that the whole way, but week 8's really going to be heavy on that. And we're going to do a lot of polish. And I'll tell you right now, I have no idea what all is going to happen in week 8, because that's really going to depend upon what your projects are and what is needed for your projects, because we're going to work on polishing those projects there. So we could be doing some wild and crazy stuff. We'll just see what happens when we get to that point. But the most important part is what you don't see on this list. You see these 8 weeks, but what's arguably more important than these 8 weeks is going to be what comes after those 8 weeks. Because ideally, you continue working on these projects. Maybe you and a couple of classmates get together and merge projects and start working on a project together. But I expect to see some decent progress in MVP at the end of the 8th week, but I also don't expect you to be done. Like I'm expecting, 8 weeks after that 8-week mark, you're sharing a video in the Facebook group, which I'll be there. Like, just because the course is over after the 8th week doesn't mean that the communication stops, because this industry is all about networking and maintaining that networking. So keep working on it, keep sharing your stuff, and we'll keep looking at it and keep commenting on it, keep giving feedback and all that. Yeah, that's kind of a breakdown.
Thank you, John. That's fantastic. So probably a few questions to be answered after this, and we've seen some coming in. So stick around for just another minute or so whilst we go through the details of what this course is about, how to join us if you would like to. So the course is 8 weeks. We have certification for the completion of the course. As an Unreal Authorized Training Center, we have authorization to give badging directly from ourselves, but authorized by Epic Games. It's all live taught through Zoom remotely. So wherever you are, you can take the class, but it's all live. You can ask questions as we go. There is the live session on the weekend, which is the main instruction portion, but we also have a lab during the week where you can bring your projects, and that's the main idea for the lab, is to go through your project work, get some support going through the project, and make sure that you get to the end of the 8 weeks with the vertical slice, the minimum viable version of your project, even if you keep working on it, which I definitely recommend, as John said, that you do. It's twice a week live, and we have a forum throughout the week, so you can post your progress, post questions into the forum throughout the week. June 3rd is the next class start date, and it is, as this says, it's all project based. Build an awesome project as much as you can get done in 8 weeks, but keep going after that. And one of the questions that came up in the chat just now was, do we get recordings? And yes, you absolutely do. All sessions are recorded, all labs are recorded. We post those, and you get access to those. They don't get taken down. You get access to the recordings and keep them forever. Keep going through the material. Masters use the concept of repetition, and it's good to go over and over things over and over again. Even if you've been in the industry a long time, go back to the basics and learn the fundamentals really well. You'll be a very strong artist if you do that. So yeah, you get access to the instructors that we have. We have John, who's the lead instructor. We have an amazing mentor coming in to join him, which we'll be able to announce very soon. We also have industry guests. We have several industry guests that come in and speak to you directly throughout the course as well. And you get access to the CG Pro community. We're a thriving community. We're a very active community, and there are options to continue to obviously, as John said, you can keep in touch with us ongoing afterwards, but there are more options to get ongoing support if you would like that as well. So probably most people have this question: how much is the class? It is less than some of our other courses that are 8 weeks long, and the price is $2,497 currently. This is going to go up in the future, but currently this course with this much interactivity, with John, an amazing, very experienced industry instructor, and access to all of those benefits, is $2,497. And we do have a couple of payment plans, being able to split this into a couple of payments. So that is the details of the class out of the way. If you guys have any questions about that, about the course, about anything that we've gone through today, we'll stay on for a bit and make sure that we answer people's questions. But that is the bulk of today's session. We do have Q&A slide next, which I'm going to say, okay, ask questions. I have a few here to go through. I'm just going to leave this up here so you've got this information for the course as well. So let me just come back here to the questions. Somebody's saying, could you use this to design or create movies as well?
Absolutely. There is a whole industry around that called virtual production, but also a whole industry of game cinematics. There are TV shows, The Mandalorian, if you've ever seen that. If you've seen anything on Netflix in the last 2 years, stuff on HBO Max, doing things up on an LED volume wall. For creating movies. There's that aspect of it. But there's also the cinematic side, which I kind of feel like this question might be tying more into that. And yes, you absolutely can. I've got a friend that working with her right now to do like a little short film inside of Unreal. With characters rendered in Unreal, environments rendered in Unreal, as well as I'm doing some stuff with another friend where filming actual people and then using Unreal as the background environment. And I actually see a question that popped up after this of, can I get the same result with a green screen and an LED wall? And I've had the pleasure of working on some stuff in the Mandalorian universe and gotten to be up on the LED volume stage and see what it's like to film actors in front of the LED volume wall and get those in-camera visual effects. But you can still achieve some pretty great results with green screen if you do it in the same manner that you would normally do green screen. It's just instead of trying to render something through V-Ray or something like that, you can build something in Unreal, get it out, as a digital environment. You can also, and a lot of people may not know this, but you can actually bring green screen footage into Unreal through a plugin called Composure, where you can set up your plates just like you would in a traditional VFX workflow. And, you can have stuff going on in there. There's a video that I will make sure that, or in some screenshots, I'll make sure to share, where I did something very recently where you can probably see the green screen behind me. And what I did was I filmed myself against the green screen, basically interacting with the default mannequin in Unreal. Now, I couldn't see what was going on. It wasn't an LED wall or anything, but I was imagining what it was like, just like an actor would imagine interacting with a CGI character in a traditional non-VP workflow. And after I did that, I took that green screen footage and I brought it in and I put it on a plane inside of Unreal, and I played it in Unreal and then screen recorded that. So it's lots of cool things that you can do. And it's something that, if you take the course, please ask me. If you don't take the course, send me a message on Facebook, whatever, ask me about it. You can do a lot of stuff with green screen and Unreal for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I've worked in that world a bunch myself through Jungle Book, which was blue screen, but same deal, doing simulcam and making a movie using Unity at that stage. Yeah. But today it's all about Unreal Engine.
I remember. I do remember that, doing some stuff for Netflix several years back with Unity and filming against a green screen.
It's super fun. I mean, basically anyone can have access to that. If you've got a webcam and a piece of green cloth, you can play with that with Unreal, which is free. You need to pay for the computer and the webcam, but no, it allows you to be able to play in this space. It's never been this accessible before.
Yeah, you can get this back here for less than $50 on Amazon.
How much for the guitar?
The guitar, that was like $600. So it's a less ball.
just
No, you can't have the guitar. No.
can't have your guitar for sure.
Can't have my guitar. No.
So another question, very similar. Like, can you also make MP4 or something similar? Yeah, you can definitely render out of the Unreal Engine. It's becoming the filmmaking tools in Unreal Engine are becoming more and more robust in being able to get high quality imagery out of the engine into movie formats.
There's a tool inside of Unreal called Sequencer, which is the evolution of Matinee, if you've ever heard of that. But Sequencer is basically, it has more in common with After Effects than it does Premiere, but it's basically a little video editor inside of Unreal where you can cut to your different cameras, you can trigger keyframes on blueprint things to happen, you can trigger anything that you can trigger with gameplay, you can trigger in Sequencer to create a cinematic with. And we call these in-game cinematics. Or pre-rendered cinematics as well. But then you can actually export those out as an AVI, or the better workflow is to export them out as an image sequence and then import that into your video editor of choice. You can export that out as MP4. But yeah, absolutely. It's really easy to get a video out of Unreal.
It's every version as well. They're just more and more film tools plowing into it, and more and more people crossing between games and film too, and even into other industries. Like I've used to be a software engineer before I got into visual effects, but then ended up working in interactive, and then making movies in game engines, and working for automotive for a bit, which was super fun. There's so many opportunities now, and learning this skill set really opens up way more doors than it did 15 years ago when I got into the business. There's so many more opportunities now in different areas, and it's fun to jump between them. You can actually learn a lot from doing that.
Well, and one of the great things with Unreal 2 is that the camera system. So they have cameras for gameplay, but they also have this whole cinematic camera aspect to it. So you bring out this thing called a cinematic camera actor. And on that actor in Unreal, you can set your sensor size. You can set your lens, your focal length. Do you want to have a prime versus a zoom? You can set all your holy trinity, your triangle, your shutter speed, ISO, and aperture. You can set all of that in there, and you can get like some real world camera visuals out of it with that, like all the bokeh, everything, and it's really cool. You can do a lot of just amazing stuff with it.
Yeah, it's cool stuff. It's getting more and more real now. Both games are becoming more filmic, and films are also learning a lot from the game industry, not just the technology that we're using to make it with, but also the techniques for world building, and the directors being able to go into these worlds and scout around the virtual world looking for places to film, which was never the way we did it in visual effects. You have to choose that at the storyboard phase. But yeah, super cool stuff. Someone saying we'll have access to the recording, which we answered already. Yep, absolutely. You get those forever. Roughly how many hours of training is that total? So it's about 60 hours through the class of live, and then obviously there's the offline and the forum, and being able to access that. So yeah, about 60 hours of live. I think that's all the questions I've got on deck. I don't know if there's any more. I'm just having a look back through the other threads here. Someone's saying, Unreal is exactly what I've been looking for. I was going to go to school for Maya years ago, but decided not to. I'm glad I waited for the software. Yeah, I did that. I went to school for Maya. Maya is still a great tool. They used a lot in the industry, but some of these other tools are coming in and eroding into the workflows that have been the mainstay of Maya for many years.
Yeah, I still use Maya every single day. But that's where that goes into more of the art side of this whole game design or game development world. So it's like, yeah, we're still using tools like Maya to build our models and ZBrush to sculpt them. We're still using Substance Painter to texture them and all of that. And then Unreal Engine is where all of these things come into. Now, one of the things that we're going to do in the course is, of course, to be able to use Unreal, one of the things that you need to understand is how to import assets. And so while we're not going to teach you how to model or texture or anything like that, I do have some models that I'm going to give you guys so that we can walk through how to import those and how to set up the master materials for them and that sort of thing. And then if any of you happen to already know how to model, you know Maya, you know how to texture, you know all that stuff, you're going to be in a really good place, because then you are going to have a little bit more power to customize things a little bit more, bring in some of your own stuff. But you don't need to know how to model to still make use of this tool. You can, there is a job called layout artist. It's really big on the film side, more so than games. But, even in the game side, you got to be able to know how to take all of these different assets and put them together in a world. And that's what Unreal Engine is for on that side of it is, you don't have to be the one doing the modeling. Somebody else could be the one doing the modeling, but somebody is modeling. But once you're in Engine, you have to arrange that stuff to do the world building aspect of it. And, that's a job in and of itself.
Absolutely. I think we're pretty much through the questions. Someone saying, thanks, that's a great price for the course. Thank you, appreciate that. I think so. It's not going to stay at that price forever, but it's a great chance to jump in at that price for sure if you want to join us. Yeah, definitely. Just a big thanks at the end. John, thanks so much for sharing your knowledge and your vast experience of the games industry and of Unreal Engine. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
And yeah, thanks for having me here. I love doing this stuff.
It shows, and I appreciate it. I'm excited about it too. One of the benefits of being part of the schools, I get to
learn all the other stuff.
I get to go to my own classes, which is really cool. I'm really looking forward to learning from you as well. And thank you also to everybody who has joined us tonight. I appreciate you all being here and taking time out of your evening to hang out with us. Thanks for asking great questions. Thanks also to our team behind the scenes, to Jackie and Jameson and the others to helping this be what it was. Yeah, I think that is all. We will see you again soon on another webinar or another event. If you would like to join us for the class, feel free to schedule a call with us, reach out to us and messages to us. We look forward to connecting with you regardless of what you choose to do, but we'd love to see you in a class and get to work with you. So have a great evening, everybody, and whatever you do, just keep making progress, keep learning something new every day, challenge yourself a little bit every day, and make some great art. And we look forward to seeing you soon. Take care, everybody.